and I was so cold, I was shivering. But I sat there and listened and kind of closed my eyes, and boom, I had the idea for the album. Well, Operation Mindcrime was born in the middle 80s, really. It was a tumultuous time, not just in America, but worldwide. Very extreme things were happening. Governments were falling. People were out of work. It was a difficult time economically for millions and millions of people around the world. And the story really came from that, from the struggle between trying to survive, really, in a modern world when so many things were happening. There were quite a few, I think at one time in the 80s, there was something like 15 different wars that were being fought. Primarily, a lot of them with the United States being part of them. Anyway, the album came from that tumultuous time. It's a story of struggle between the power and the powerless, really. A classic story, really. I had moved to Montreal after a tour, the Rage for Order album tour, and I needed some time to sort of reflect and maybe a place to feel creative. So I moved to Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I was living there in the snow. It was very, very cold, very dark all the time. I'd walk down to the grocery store on the corner to get some groceries, and I heard this church music coming from a church across the street. And I was curious about the sound. And I went to the church, I walked in, and there was a choir performing and practicing. And I sat down, and I was so cold, I was shivering. But I sat there and listened and kind of closed my eyes, and boom, I had the idea for the album. I rushed out of the church, ran home, didn't even go to the grocery store. And I spent 4 days writing and came up with the idea. Some of the songs already started to happen, and wrote out the whole story. And it was all finished in my head at that time. And then later, a few months later, I took it to the band and presented them the idea. And they got on board, and before long, we had an album. Well, I think the success of the album came very slowly. It didn't really explode. It kind of started out very slowly and kind of gathered momentum, and more people heard about it. We had procured some very high-profile tours at that time, so a lot of people got to hear our music for the first time. And then we had a breakthrough video on MTV. Eyes of a Stranger came out, and once that happened, sales of the album were great, and a lot of people heard about us for the very first time, and that was their first introduction to the band, which is great. I think when you see a band or an artist that you find interesting, and then you find out, oh, they have several albums, I can go back and see and hear their progression and what they've done. I think that's an exciting thing for people to experience. I know I like to when that happens. "30 years is a long time to be in a band. I think most bands don't last that long, and Queensryche, with me, lasted 30 years, which is a lifetime, all right? And I think it's inevitable that people develop different likes and dislikes. They have different interests, different things that move them, and different ways they want to experience creativity. And so I think it was sort of an inevitable parting of ways, really, which I have no regrets. I think we made some amazing albums in 30 years. We wrote so many wonderful songs and had so many great experiences traveling the world, 66 countries, traveling around the world. Pretty impressive time. And I have no regrets. It was a wonderful experience. Operation Mindcrime 3 is the story from the lead character, Dr. X. It's from his perspective. Mindcrime 1 and Mindcrime 2 were really from the character Nikki's perspective. And so that's what we know. But with the new album, we see why we know what we know and what was the inspiration for Dr. X to create Operation Mindcrime in the first place, which is pretty exciting, pretty intense. Hi, this is Jeff Tate, and here I am at the Rock Hard Festival. It's amazing. We're filming the show tonight, and if you'd like to see the full show, my show, you can press this icon right here and see the whole thing. Rock Hard.